thefirestore.com, equipping protectors with passion. That's how we operate, and it's how we live. We understand that having the right gear can make the difference between life and death. Our goal is to get you the gear you need, when you need it, at prices you can afford. Visit us at thefirestore.com and shop our deals page. Rosenbauer America is a leading manufacturer of firefighting vehicles and equipment with over 150 years of experience. Rosenbauer incorporates global strengths and innovation to provide a large and technologically advanced line of custom and commercial pumpers, rescues, tankers, aerials, and the battery extinguishing system technology. You may know it as the BEST. Visit the company's website for more information at www.rosenbaueramerica.com. Hi, Chris Mc Loone here with Fire Apparatus and Emergency Equipment. Welcome to this, our second episode covering NFPA 1900. For those who joined us last time, you'll remember. For those who didn't, just understand there is a new standard for fire apparatus going into effect in January. That'll be January 1st, 2024. It is a combination of various standards. If you do want to check out part one, that is available at fireapparatusmagazine.com/podcasts. I have the same two guests I had last time. This is Ed Rice with Washington, D.C. Fire Department, the DCFD, and Bill Peters, a retired battalion chief out of Jersey City, New Jersey Fire Department. Both of these gentlemen were on the committee that helped to develop NFPA 1900. It's going to be called NFPA 1900. It combines 1901, 1906, the ambulance standard, and also the ARF, the Aircraft Rescue and Firefighting Standard for ARF apparatus. So all of them are now in one combined document that, as I recall, gentlemen, is 350, maybe 350 plus pages. So we wanted to go over, last time we gave a background on what some of the biggest changes you would see are in the standard, and then we threw it out to you. We asked for your questions for Ed and Bill to maybe get some clarifications on some things, and we did get questions. We've sorted through them. We put them together for today. Guys, if you're ready, I'd like to just jump right off here. This one is a slightly involved one that, I could not memorize, so excuse me looking off of the screen here. But this our first question today, Ed, I'll throw it out to you first. I'm an aerial instructor in Virginia, and occasionally I field questions about the NFPA requirement for 75 PSI ground pressure, which is now 100 PSI in the new standard, that can be exerted by a stabilizer jack. My question is, how was the 75 PSI maximum established? Where did that number come from? NFPA 1900 changes it to allow 100 PSI maximum. I read through the notes and found some references to maximum pressure allowed on a parking deck, and therefore the standard should allow the increase to 100 PSI. I wouldn't think fire apparatus should be allowed to operate on a parking deck. That's why I'm asking about the maximum PSI and how the committee came up with that number. So, Ed, that was a mouthful. I can go back and read a couple parts of it if you want to take chunks of that at a time. But I wanted to start with you. How did the committee come up with that new number?
So, Chris, just to go back to the previous conversations, like in task groups, they're broken down, and manufacturers' representatives that were part of the committee and their engineers, aerial engineers that were involved in this. And it basically came down to the tires on the vehicle. One of the key things about the tires were pretty much exerting 100 PSI of pressure on the ground as the vehicle would sit on any road surface or, whether it's concrete, blacktop, etc. And that's how they got into it, that ground pressure of the vehicle being exerted. So when the vehicle gets put up on jacks and the plate that's underneath of it extends out the area, the engineers determined that they'd be able to use some smaller plates underneath of the jacks or outriggers, depending on the type of stabilization you had. and you would be exerting the same pressure that a tire might be exerting when it was just sitting on there. As far as the parking decks, typically an aerial device is usually too heavy to be on a parking deck, and that information, whatever that jurisdiction is, and the AHJ there, they'd be able to determine by whoever built the building, the architects, etc., what the weight loading requirements would be on any kind of a parking deck, parking garage, etc. If you have below grade parking, and that's not uncommon to encounter that in a lot of places. But it came down to the surface area, the tires being on the ground, and the same pressures being exerted on jack plates. And if we were able to use a smaller jack plate, it would be less cumbersome for the individuals having to pull them out, and weight reduction as well, and place them on the ground. Might be able to eliminate some back injuries and things like that.
Okay.
But that's pretty much where that came from.
Bill, do you have anything to add to Ed's explanation on the 100 PSI rating?
No, actually, Ed is correct. What happens is people are not familiar with the NFPA committee. The task groups operate independently, and they're open to everyone, not just the voting members of the committee, manufacturers, aerial manufacturers, tire manufacturers, anybody who wants to be part of the task group. So when the aerial task group met and they discussed this business, they were the ones who came up with the recommendation, and then they throw it over to the voting committee members. And so, I'm not a tire engineer or a chassis engineer, weight engineer. So we basically take their word for it, and they certainly wouldn't have any reason to give any kind of bad information. So that's the idea. But Ed is right. It's to to shrink the size of the plates and to allow for a little more than used to be. The tires on the trucks nowadays are considerably different than quote unquote the old days when I used to be out there.
All right, for this next question, Bill, I'll start with you. And we touched on this a little bit in part one, but I wanted to talk about the VDR. Our next question is, with the industry focusing on firefighter safety and health, why was the VDR module removed from the standard? And I guess before you answer that, give a brief explanation of what the VDR is for those who might not know.
Okay, VDR is the vehicle data recorder. And in it, the NFPA standard had listed a number of things that they wanted recorded on the VDR, including speed, braking, turning, warning lights on, siren on, things like that. So the whole idea of the VDR when it was first introduced was that the fire chief could download the information off the VDR and make a safer operation. So I guess the fire chief with 3 rigs in the fleet, and he's got nothing better to do in the afternoon, and he wanted to download this stuff and look at it and see how his drivers were performing. He could do that. The thing is that the VDR was adding cost to the apparatus, and no one was using it, or at least I can't say no one, but it wasn't widely used, even though in the standard it said it had to be downloadable by the administration and so forth. It seems like the only ones who were downloading any information off that were defense lawyers who were looking to sue the fire department for various reasons. But in any case, this standard, you will find a lot of things have been taken out, things that are either unnecessary or things that are routinely included, like, for instance, fuel filters and oil filters and all. It's unnecessary to say in the standard that the rig has to have an oil filter when you're not going to get any kind of engine warranty if it didn't have an oil filter, So this was just another one of those things that was taken out because it was not widely used. If a person wants a VDR, they can certainly specify it, and it will be included. So, they'll have to pay for it rather than having everybody pay for it. That's the idea. If you want it, you specify it.
Was it completely taken out of the standard, or was this one of the items that was moved into the annex?
No, it was one of the items that was moved into the annex, just like some of the other electronic things that
Okay.
If you want it, you specify it. It was just pointed out that it's available.
Okay. Ed, how about you? Anything to add to the reasoning behind that based on your experience on the committees?
The one thing was that Bill said, it was basically, it was very cumbersome. If anybody that's ever attempted to download and try and read it, whether it's a printed out copy or electronically on a computer screen while you're doing it, it was very hard to understand, and it was broken down, in like sometimes in less than seconds, depending on what system it was. So it was very cumbersome. A lot of the information that was on there, as far as the seatbelt monitoring systems, you can get that information right out of there. The ECM on the engine is going to give you hard braking incidents and other various information as far as road speed and things like that. So there was a lot of redundancy with specifically the VDR based on a lot of the other electronics that were already incorporated as standard, on the vehicle, just because of the engine, the transmission, et cetera, ABS, and so on. You can capture all those things, and like you said, the added cost and whatnot. And the fire department, if they want the VDR, they still have the option to include that in their specifications and ask for it. There's nothing to stop them from doing that.
Okay, our next question, I'll start with you, Ed, on this one. And it is another one that we did touch on in the first round. And it was one of the major changes that you guys cited. Questioner here just wants to maybe get down into a little bit more detail. I'm not sure how much detail there really is beyond colors. The question is, please break down the revision on the chevrons on the back of the apparatus. Ed, I'll start with you. Talk about that change and just what it means to fire departments.
So chevrons are still required, Chris. They didn't go away. Basically, the simple answer is you're allowed the flexibility of choosing the colors. So originally, the colors started with having lime green, lime yellow, whichever you prefer, or yellow amber, and the color red. What was happening is those colors were becoming used on vehicles other than fire apparatus. You could find them on city transit buses. You could find them on road service trucks, various other vehicles on the road construction, etc. So those colors kind of like drifted away from being specific to fire trucks. Plus, there was a lot of fire departments, depending on the color of the vehicle, they preferred to have colors that matched a little bit better. The manufacturers that were on the committee talked about they were always having to get waivers signed, and it became problematic. People were still putting chevrons on, but they wanted the flexibility of the colors. And that's pretty much where it went, is the flexibility to choose the colors, but they have to be contrasting. So they're still required, but you're allowed a choice of colors.
Bill, what's your take on that one? Dive in a little bit on the chevrons.
Well, I was around way back when we required reflective stripes on the side of the rig, and that was a big deal. And then it was a 4-inch width on the front and the rear. European rigs for a long time have had all kinds of other markings. If you look at fire apparatus. I think it's in England or at least some of the European countries. They have a checkerboard pattern on the side, ambulances as well. And it was all for high visibility. So during that time, the committee was talking about the chevron stripings on the back and came up with the idea of doing it on all apparatus. And the colors came into question. And that was specifically brought up was, well, you know, some people said, well, this red and yellow are going to identify fire trucks. And it was brought up and people said, well, what's going to prevent anybody else from doing a FedEx truck or UPS or anybody? And really, that's the way we've evolved. So those colors are not specific to fire trucks. So one of the reasons why it really needed to be addressed was, you know, fire departments all over were specifying, you know, whatever colors they wanted back there. And the manufacturer, you know, won't refuse to do it, but you're going to sign that statement of exception saying that you're acknowledging that it's not NFPA compliant. And who's going to be responsible for making it compliant? So if you have, you know, purple and green stripes on the back of your rig because it's, you know, it's the town colors. If that rig gets hit in an accident, the first thing they're going to say is that the back of the rig was not compliant and, you know, the client couldn't see it because it wasn't compliant. And then it's going to go back to the manufacturer is going to say, well, I have here Chief Jones signed a statement of exception saying that he's going to make it compliant. So, you know, it made a problem for the fire department. It made a problem for the manufacturers. And as you know, we've had an epidemic of accidents involving, you know, highway collisions. And it's just one more thorn. So the feeling was if people want to do purple and green, they can. And as long as it's, you know, 6 inches wide, alternating stripes and an inverted V, so be it. It's still better than we had before, which was a 4-inch wide stripe covering, I think it was 50% of the rear of the apparatus. So it's probably a step up for fire departments who want to you know, do their own color schemes and stuff. But you find some of the biggest fire departments just don't comply with it at all. So you know, I don't want to name names, but right from the get-go, there were fire departments that had, for instance, blue and white rigs that had a blue and white chevron pattern on the back when they were done. So you know, it just kind of eases the legal burden of a fire department specifying what stripes they want. And it's still, as long as it's reflective and it's alternating colors that are highly contrasting, I think is the way the standard describes it, no harm done.
I think one of the things that you mentioned just now that is important to remember, because it's not something that is debatable, and there's a very specific reason for it, is that, you know, although the colors are optional now, with that criteria that you mentioned, they have to be in an inverted V. And just could you just touch on why that inverted V is important in this instance?
Right. The idea of the inverted V is to wave traffic in the direction of the way the wings are facing, so to speak. And the thing that I always point out is if you drive down any highway and you see a bridge abutment that has one of these warning signs on it, you'll see that it's not waving you towards the creek on the other side of the bridge abutment. It's waving you back onto the road. So the idea of the inverted V is more or less to split the traffic left and right away from the back of the rig. So, you know, if you had the V the other way, it would be like saying, hit me here, you know, right in the middle. But at least this way, it's waving the traffic off into the side directions. And I think that's a Federal Highway Administration requirement on any road sign that's put on a bridge abutment or any place where you want to direct traffic away from a guardrail or anything like that.
Okay, we have speaking of you know, some of the visibility of the rigs. Our next question is about emergency warning lights, and it's specifically emergency warning lights here. Do all the emergency warning lights have to be manufactured by one lighting company on the rig? So I guess it's, like, can you mix and match, different warning lights based on, the different features of the lights? Ed, I'll start with you. Do you have to go with one company on that?
No, you don't, Chris. Basically, before you used to have to. Just for an example, and it even went in place with an electronic siren also, like a Whalen electronic siren or a Federal electronic siren. The speaker for that siren had to be manufactured by Whalen or Federal per se, or whoever the manufacturer was, which was kind of presented other issues too because of the various front bumper configurations and trying to make siren speakers fit in different places. So the same thing was going on with warning lights as well. You're still required to have the same pattern of the warning lights. The way the fire truck was broken down in the overhead view, that X that's drawn over top of it, the crisscross, it more greatly reflects the exact corners of the front bumpers and the rear corners where the tailboard would be. So it definitely defined the front, the sides, and the rear better from the old setup that was there as far as the sides A, B, C, and D. And now the flexibility was there where if somebody wanted, a certain brand of light bars, but wanted different flashing lights on the front, the sides, and the rear, now they can do that and they can still meet the standard. It's a little bit more complicated, the testing process for the certification, but they're still allowed to have flexibility in choosing the lighting products and weren't dialed in and had to have one specific brand of warning lights to be able to comply with the standard. And that's pretty much why that was changed around, is because people wanted one brand of light bars, but wanted a different brand of light bars, say on the rear corners, on the upper zone, and the lower zones, they wanted another manufacturer's lights. So the department has more flexibility now in specifying the lighting package that they want, but they still have to comply with the lighting requirements.
Okay. Bill, any other comments on that?
Yeah, the way it came down to one manufacturer, well, that's a misnomer. You could have previously you could more or less have one manufacturer in the upper zone and one in the lower zone. You could have, for instance, Whalen warning lights in the lower zone and Federal light bars on the top. However, how it came down was, in order to certify the system to meet NFPA 1901 at the time, was that there were three ways to do it. The lighting manufacturer could say, if you put these lights in these locations, we'll sign off that it meets the NFPA. The second way was the amount of light output and so forth, number of flashes and all that. And the third was they could actually put the truck in a dark bay and do photometric measurements of the truck. Well, that third one was dropped out of this standard because nobody's doing that. The other two still remain. So the lighting manufacturer can say, okay, this light bar will meet NFPA in the A zone or the forward zone and so forth, and the manufacturer can do the calculations that whatever lights you put on the apparatus that they meet. The other thing was, again, use a Federal upper package. There is nothing to say you couldn't add additional warning lights from another manufacturer in there, as long as you met the zone minimums with one manufacturer. Basically, the 1900 has just, the only thing that's really changed is the way it's certified, is that you can certify it by the lighting manufacturer certifying that his light will cover each zone at a minimum, and secondly, the manufacturer, the apparatus can take those calculations and certify that the lighting system meets. And the other mix and match previously, even if you had a federal upper zone, you could mix other lights in there besides that, as long as you met the minimums.
Okay. You still had trouble getting the, you would still end up with some waivers and exceptions to sign if you did get a third-party inspector to do a 1901 certification process on the vehicle. We've encountered that with particularly the siren deal over the front bumper in the past, but we did have struggles, and sometimes that was manufacturer dependent too.
Okay, now our next question has to do with electric fire trucks. We are seeing more news about departments at least investigating them. Some of them are giving them a shot to see how they work, how they can be integrated into their operations. But 1901 obviously did not have anything about them in there. How in the new standard, how are electric fire trucks addressed? Bill, I'll start with you on that one. How are electric fire trucks addressed in 1900?
Well, the first thing that had to happen was they had to go through the standard, and when they spoke about engines and things like that, or so forth, they had to define whether they're talking about internal combustion or an EV or electric fire vehicle. Similar to cars, they have to have cut loops available on, I believe it's on both sides now, behind a door that can disconnect the batteries in case of an emergency. They have to be identified as electric fire vehicle. I think it's on 3 sides, if I'm not mistaken. It's a whole new technology for us, for everyone. I think that Ed is looking at one for DC, trying to stay PC, politically correct. Got to have those electric vehicles. Although the funny thing is, I see that New York City tried some electric vehicle dump trucks for snow plows, and they found that they didn't work out because they couldn't get the amount of time they needed out of them, and they took too long to charge up and so forth. When they said a diesel truck could just keep going and going as long as it got some fuel. So Ed, maybe you could address the EVs a little bit more.
So on the electric vehicle, Chris, as far as that was concerned, they differentiated between the internal combustion engine requirements and the EV requirements. And the piggyback on what Bill said, they had to put the cut loops in and identify the locations and labeling and things like that covered that. So the cut loops, you have to open a little access door. You can pull it out or you can cut it, depending on the manufacturer. And they're located usually on 2 sides, definitely on 2 sides, and I think maybe one to the rear. But that was pretty much where it went. They went through the standard, separated out internal combustion engine from electric vehicle requirements. One of the bigger deals was making sure they were able to pass a pump test. That was a hot topic of discussion through the task groups and whatnot. And so that was like one of the tougher things for them, pump capacity and the timing of the batteries. All the electric fire trucks all have, for lack of a better term, a diesel engine on them. It's either a range extender or you can decide whether you want to run on diesel power or electric battery power. So basically, we had to scrub through the standard and do a little bit of differentiating by overlaying things and just separating them out. And that's the pretty simple answer to that question.
Okay. This one, this is our last question. Besides, any general comments you both might have, this is about how to get it. And the question is, if a written copy of 1900 has been purchased, does the NFPA have a means for the purchaser to download it without incurring an extra cost? That might just be a matter of, hey, contact NFPA, but I didn't know if you guys had any answers for the questioner there. Ed, I'll start with you.
So you can go on the NFPA website, and the document is available in read only. It's a little bit of a lengthy document, and I don't believe you can search it as easy as if you did have a downloadable copy. I'm not sure if anything has changed, but if you were a member of the NFPA, you were allowed to download at one time. I don't know if that's still in effect. And then, you can always go on the NFPA website and purchase the documents and have they will send you a hard copy of the document wherever you choose to have it sent. It's a pretty simple, cut and dry answer on that, Chris.
Bill, anything else on that? Anything you've experienced?
Just it's a little bit big and it's a little bit heavy, but I'm old school. I like the paper book where you can go through it. My copy of NFPA 1901, I feel bad. I lost it somewhere, and I had to buy a new one. And it looks funny because the new one, the covers are all shiny. The old one was all beat up and dog-eared pages and things underlined and circled and so forth. And a few times I've been at manufacturers and had disagreements with them. I said, don't make me take out the red book and point it out to you. But it's happened. But I think the big new heavy one. See how it is? I tell people it's like when I was a kid, we used to wait for the Sears wish book to come at Christmas. That's about the size of it. But it's all in there. Even though if you're not interested in ambulances or ARC vehicles or what have you, you got it. You got it. You paid for it. So there you go.
All right. Well, thank you both for taking some time out to answer some of our audience's questions about the new standard. Before I let you go, Bill, I'll start with you on this one. Do you just have any other thoughts on the new standard that departments should be considering as it goes into effect? Is it really kind of like a matter of, well, it's not really there, outside of what we've talked about in parts 1 and 2, there really isn't that much that's different that you're going to have to adjust to. But Bill, any closing thoughts on this new revision?
I would say my best advice is get a copy of it and get familiar with it, because it there's a lot of pages and there's a lot of things have changed as far as you don't have a separate pumper chapter and things like that. So the best thing would be get it, leaf through it, get familiar with it. This way, you know what you're talking about. But in most cases, the manufacturer should be well familiar with it, and you could get some good guidance there. The only thing is, a lot of times you'll get people swear up and down, this is NFPA, and really it's not. So many of the changes have been things that have been deleted rather than things that have been added.
Okay, Ed, how about you?
So Chris, really, I'd recommend that people get a copy of it and familiarize themselves with it. It's a little bit confusing to follow as far as the way the document is split up in the book. And it's really going to be taking the time to be familiar with it and making sure you're in the right section and understanding what you're reading. And the only way really to do that is to review the document. You can read it online on the NFPA site, but probably having the book is going to be pretty beneficial to anybody. Just for familiarization with it and being able to navigate the document. There's going to be some confusion early on as far as where you are in the document, making sure you're not looking at something that is for ambulances, and where you are versus a pumper, a ladder truck, or a rescue vehicle, etc. Specialty vehicles where they come in the standard. And it's really going to be able to navigate it and know what section you're really in.
Okay. Well, again, my thanks to you both for joining me for a second installment of this. Hopefully we don't need any more. But if anyone does have any questions based on, if you go back to fireapparatusmagazine.com/podcast to listen to or view episode 1 on NFPA 1900, or if you have any questions based on what we talked about today, please let me know. Chris.McLoone at clarionevents.com. I will get your questions to Bill and Ed, and we will get you an answer. As well, if you have any topics that we haven't hit on yet this year in our podcast that you'd like us to, please let me know. We have the experts available to us, the subject matter experts, to get you the answers you need on these topics. So again, Bill, Ed, thank you very much for joining me again. It's been. I know Bill had some technical difficulties today, but we got it all done.
Good.
We got it all through. But again, my thanks to you. You guys have a great holiday season to both of you. We are in December for this. So again, this has been Chris Mc Loone with Fire Apparatus and Emergency Equipment. Have a good one and stay safe. Rosenbauer America is a leading manufacturer of firefighting vehicles and equipment with over 150 years of experience. Rosenbauer incorporates global strengths and innovation to provide a large and technologically advanced line of custom and commercial pumpers, rescues, tankers, aerials, and the battery extinguishing system technology. You may know it as the BEST. Visit the company's website for more information at www.rosenbaueramerica.com. TheFirestore.com, equipping protectors with passion. That's how we operate, and it's how we live. We understand that having the right gear can make the difference between life and death. Our goal is to get you the gear you need, when you need it, at prices you can afford. Visit us at TheFirestore.com and shop our deals page.